What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to Addiction is a Scam. I'm Breaking Chains. You can call me BC, and this is the Stigma Lounge. Come on in. Thanks for stopping by. I can't thank y'all enough for the support of the community page, everything that whether you are learning something, whether you're bringing something, or whether you're just observing in case you need it in the future. We just strive to bring y'all the best information we can when it comes to things like addiction, substance abuse, and all of the moral fabrics that are intertwined into this thing some call disease and others call a choice. Tonight's episode is going to be simply just kind of telling y'all about this setting. What is the Stigma Lounge? What is Addiction is a Scam? And who is BC will be the next episode. Now, we tried getting this episode to you for last Thursday. That didn't work out. Had some technical difficulties. Had a problem arise with a recording of a guest-based episode. Chain effect, blah, blah, blah. You don't need to hear any more about it. But you will actually be kind of blessed with a little 3-part mini-series now, because you'll get content today, you will get content tomorrow, and then Wednesday, Thanksgiving Eve, you will get the first guest-based interview from the Stigma Lounge. Now, let's get down to the skinny. What's it all about? Well, it's about this. It's about my journey through what some will call addiction. I call drug abuse. But some would say it started in 2007, 2008. The first time that I really felt that sickness in the sense of like physical withdrawal. Others would argue that it dates way back to 1989, 1990. Well, maybe y'all will even help me figure out is what that answer is. Now, there's a lot of people out there that believe addiction is a disease. And although I went through hell and back with drug abuse, I do not believe addiction is a disease. I have guests on here from all walks of life, from every angle on that question, and from about every possible scenario in and around the topic, whether heavily involved, whether helping treat it. But one way or another, we all have one common goal, and that is to prevent this from happening to others. Because I know that I was one that lived life very hard-headed, had to learn everything the hard way. It didn't matter. Could have had the advice right there in front of my face. Could have had a crystal ball, and I would have still doubted it. I like to give people the example when I'm trying to explain to them what I mean by that is, for instance, way back when I was in my teenage years, I tried mushrooms. Knew I didn't like them instantly. Went a couple, 2-3 more rounds with those things before I decided, all right, yeah, no, you definitely don't like those. But again, we will get into me in the next episode. That will be for y'all tomorrow night for what this is. So I would say probably about 2018 is when I really started really thinking about and realizing that I really did want to do something, some way, somehow when it comes to helping others. You could go back, you could look at what I went to college for. Well, originally I was thinking physical education, but then I switched that up, thinking somewhere along the lines of like probation officer type stuff to help. Always had a thing for wanting to help the youth, and I think that if you dive deep down into my psyche, probably results from that story you will be told in our next episode. So I don't have a ton of time in 2018, single father, and working a job as many hours as I can. Literally, like some days I would have to only leave work because daycare was closing. So I would drop my daughter off about 5:45 in the morning, and then I would leave work about 5:15 um, because daycare closed at 5:30. So knew I wanted to do something, didn't know how to approach it, didn't have the time to approach it. But on the weekends and things like that, or night times, I would get on the social media apps and kind of sniff around, so to speak, what was going on, what was being said, what was being done, how it was being addressed, and what people were thinking in terms of addiction. Um, Came in contact with some very special people. Um, One of them, great human being, has since at that time in 2018, he was telling me how he wanted to open up a facility in Pennsylvania. He has since done that. When I reached out to him to see if I could mention our conversation back then, I haven't heard back from him yet. He always gets back, but I just, out of respect of not hearing back from him, yeah, I'm going to keep that name private. Um, but kudos to him. He did and is doing one hell of a job on this fight. Um, for the platform itself, I didn't get to that point of actually like, all right, let's do that until I would say 2021. So between 18 and 21, what I was doing though was I was making notes in my phone. Like it didn't matter to me if it was like a marketing idea. It didn't matter if it was like just a psychological thought, like an angle of way to look at things, communication keys, talking points, whatever you want to call them. Um, Jotting that stuff all down and just ideas. I didn't know again how to get there, but I knew after talking to him that you know what, that's needed around here too. Like we need a facility that actually treats this stuff the way it should be treated, because I was not one to ever get into the never been doing AA, never been doing NA, never done any of that stuff. Been to one inpatient, been to two outpatients only because they were court ordered. The first outpatient I ever saw any part of was way back in like 2002, 2003. They had me in this thing for, I don't even honestly remember what. Maybe it definitely wasn't a possession ticket because I knew that it definitely wasn't a possession ticket. I don't even, honest to God, know what they had me there for, but they had me there, nonetheless. And am I, no offense, but the place was a joke. Um, I don't know that. Well, I'll start with everybody there thought they were smarter than anybody that was coming through that door as a client. Um, the place is solely, in my opinion, funded off the courts, because if it wasn't for the courts making people go there, nobody would go there. It just is what it is. So that was the first one. The second one was also court mandated, but it was a fall off of inpatient that I was mandated to in 2014, and the court mandate read that I was to complete that inpatient and then whatever the suggested path forward from that inpatient was. So then it was into outpatient. Um, that one was a little better, but still very. I, they just, I felt like they just didn't get it. I attribute that to simple things like If you were to go to war, do you want the women that have been training, that signed up for that, that been there doing it, already fought, or do you want the ones that are grabbed from the draft because we got this fight to go fight and we don't have enough people? Well, you obviously will want the ones that have been through this already, that have been doing it, that know everything about it, the ins, the outs. That's common sense. Um, I've also kind of explained it in a way of there's a reason these days when you turn on, whether it's the Olympics, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, volleyball, NASCAR, any of that stuff, it's like the former athletes that you're getting that, like, that's who they have on the television speaking to you, that's who they have on the radio talking to you. That's just, again, in my opinion, common sense. So my drive and my passion came from the way to spearhead this the right way is to get the people who have really lived it addressing it, not what I call the test takers. I applaud those people. I applaud them. I'm not knocking them one bit. I applaud them for the ones that have true passion for it, of wanting to help. Now, there's some that see it as a job opportunity, and or maybe they have a family member who was in the field and they like had an in, so like they just kind of easy way. I'm going to do this, get my little retirement package, health insurance, blah blah blah. That's a different ball game, but for the most part, at the very least, these people are doing it because they want to help. Now, again, it's not a knock on them, but if it's something you haven't lived, it's kind of hard to help. It's a very unique field. It's a very unique demographic, and you're dealing with the most uniqueness of individuals. There's no cookie cutter method to this approach on helping others that are struggling with this issue. So I knew that's first and foremost, we got to do that. So, how do we get there? I started looking at grants. Like, can I apply for grants that can get the funding to just jump right in, dive right in the waters, like straight from idea to brick and mortar. And that would be wonderful if that was a pathway, but unfortunately, it's not. So I realized quickly that the grants, the sizable grants that have enough funding behind them to actually do the type of stuff that I wanted to do, you kind of already had to be established in the healthcare field to even qualify for, let alone potentially get. So that was out. I mulled over the idea of pitching the business plan to venture capitalists. And the reason I ultimately ruled against that was because I felt that, again, I wanted this to be authentic. I wanted it to be pure, and I wanted it to be completely natural in the sense of what I saw and how I understand things. I felt like there was no other way than to keep it 100 on that, and bringing in somebody and asking them to put up their money and then not have input is like, that's, you're not gonna find that. Like, it's just, oh, let's just be real. So then it was, so how do we do it? So how do we get there? Like, how are we gonna do this? I'm starting to see more and more about this. People dying of fentanyl overdoses, but not to do with fentanyl. Like, they're happening from maybe people are trying to go skiing at the mountain, or they're thinking that they're trying to treat their ADHD from the streets. And the fentanyl's in that, and they're overdosing and they're dying from that. And to be completely completely honest with you, that off big time because that's just low life, dirty, dirty, dirty. Um, Back when I was um, in the heart of my drug abuse, I learned, at least in the inner city, that like there was a couple different types of suppliers. And there were suppliers of the stimulants, so to speak, that completely despised the suppliers of the downers of the opiates because they felt like they preyed on people's souls, their sickness, um, for their clientele, their customer base. They didn't like them, like legit couldn't stand them. That's the street, That's like that was the street back then. And then all of a sudden, now we're at this point where like we're just putting fentanyl and everything, and it's okay, and it's not. So I'm seeing these, and that's annoying me. And then it kind of hit like the town that I'm raising my daughter in. It happened, and I was like, all right, I gotta see. Like this is nuts. This is so sad. I gotta see what's going on with this. And I would say that really kicked me into high gear. Um, what I want to do real quick is a person that I met through a mutual friend that I've been working with. Um, Hoping that either she'll be a guest on this podcast or I'll go be a guest um, on hers one way or another. I'm hoping we get to work together. But I seen an interview that she posted a few days back and really touched on what I'm talking about with the fentanyl stuff. So I want to show you all that video, and then we'll get down to the rest of how we got here and what's going on with it.
So can you give us some statistics about what about the overdose rates and addiction right now currently?
Oh, absolutely. I think, the most important number is this. The number one cause of death right now in the United States for Americans 18 to 45 is overdose. Now, that is a combination of fentanyl poisoning and overdoses. But that's 18 to 45. And to me, that means that's like the tail end of high school and it's college. That's new families that are getting married in their 20s. And by the way, it's the heart of the workforce in America. So that's very dangerous that the heart of America, the number one killer, is our issue. Now, let me say this. On average, every day in the United States, we average 200 overdoses a day. Now that's average. And I'll give you two things about that. What does 200 mean to you? It probably means something different than it means to me. But my good friend from Athens, Georgia, Coach Scott Cochran, coach with the University of Georgia football team. He's in recovery. He's the president of the American Addiction Recovery Association. Scott will tell you, Coach Cochran will tell you that what 200 means to him is that when a Division I football team like the University of Georgia goes to an away game, on that plane they travel on, players, coaches, and staff, that's 200 people. And Coach Cochran will say this. He says, what if the UGA plane crashed on Monday and the University of Alabama plane crashed on Tuesday and the Georgia Tech plane crashed on Wednesday? He said, how many days do you think that would go before the people of America demanded the White House and Boeing Airlines and Delta Airlines and the NCAA do something about this? Because people would be like, I can't watch my favorite college football team on Saturday if you're letting them die every day in a plane crash.
It's so true too. It's like it's the world we live in, but it's so true. It's crazy.
But no one's doing that for the 200 people dying a day on average for our disease. One more stat. And this is going to hit home to a lot of people, but it needs to be said. couple of weeks ago here, right here in Georgia, right by Athens, Clark County, and Barrow County, there was a tragic shooting at Appalachian High School. I just was at Appalachian High School a couple of weeks ago with the Recovery Month bus. And, we lost 4 lives at Appalachian High School during that shooting. And that's tragic. And every one of those lives, may their memories be a blessing. And prayers to the family, all 4 families. But that made international news over and over and over. I don't mean national news, I mean international news. But that same week in Barrow County, that very same week, there were 4 other people that died from fentanyl poisoning and overdose. And those 4 people in Barrow County that died, I haven't found one news story about them locally, statewide, nationally, and certainly not internationally. And my point being is that that's 8 Georgians who died tragically in one county in 1 week, but 4 of them got no attention. We've got to do better because all these lives matter. And my brothers and sisters dying from my disease, being poisoned through fentanyl poisoning, also experiencing overdose, slightly different nuance, but every one of those lives matters. So that's some numbers. I'll give you some other numbers. In America right now, according to the federal government, they tell us that there's 46 million Americans in active addiction, 29 million Americans in recovery. People that know math much, much better than me, these people probably go to Georgia Tech. They tell me that that means there's 1.3 million Georgians right now in active addiction and 900,000 Georgians in recovery. So this is not just another policy issue. It's not just another issue to talk about at the local Rotary Club or at the local church or at the local bar or at the local, wherever you gather, at the local barbecue restaurant. It's the number 1 domestic policy issue in the United States because more Americans are dying from it. And those that survive it, like I'm blessed to be a survivor, Jamie, you're blessed to be a survivor, us and our families are impacted with significant financial devastation because we're not even getting it right for survivors in terms of their insurance and coverage for programs. So whether you live or die, addiction ravishes families, and fentanyl is a game changer.
Those are some pretty big numbers, I must say. 46 million Americans. And it's just wild to think about. So this is all going on. And again, making me more mad and annoyed and frustrated. And like, I'm seeing all these things. Like, I got one here for you. In 2023, the National Institution of Drug Abuse had approximately $1.7 billion that it used in researched drug use and addiction, including biological, behavioral, and social factors. That's not counting the money from private and nonprofit funding. They spent probably over $2 billion on the nature versus nurture debate, in my opinion. And that's crazy. So now it's like, I have to hit this. I have to get onto it. How am I going to do it? And at that time, about, like I said, 2021, where the light bulb went off was I like just happened chance fell into the meme stock mania stuff. Literally had never even heard of Reddit before this. Promise you that. December of 2020, I had bought some um, calls for a movie theater, and like they're just like, and I'm like, what in the? Also during that time, I had some financial stuff I was dealing with, so I was in one of the banks. I had to go, like I was at the bank, and they said you're better off going to your local branch, whatever, home branch or whatever they call it. So I went to that bank and I just got talking with the guy, telling him about some of this, the fluke of it. He told me about a different platform um, than the one I was using that I should check out. So when I got on that platform, there was like a chat and stuff for each ticker symbol. And that's when I learned about Reddit, and that's when I learned about these influencers that were on YouTube and talking about these stocks. So I get on and I'm like, this is the middle of the day, on the East Coast, and there's so many people on these live feeds. And that's kind of when the light bulb was like, ding, podcasting, live show, whatever you want to call it. That's the angle. That's the avenue. So I got all those notes. Now I got this light bulb, and I start putting them all together. And I start, getting my ducks in a row. I literally took a notebook, wrote out, can I even start a podcast? And basically everything's a no on it, like as far as like, your equipment, all your stuff, like knowing how to use, having the hardware and having the software, and then knowing how to use the hardware and knowing how to use the software are both things like have to figure out, because don't know any of this, never was a tech person. Like I joke around sometimes and say I was just figuring out AOL Instant Messenger, and people were moving from MySpace to Facebook. Like I don't know if it wasn't an interest, if it was like because it was difficult, just like a cop out, But either way, had no knowledge of it. So I start checking off the boxes as I can to get to a point where like the question to the answer is yes, I can start a podcast. And then I'm 2023, I believe it was, listening to a high school dropout speak with another gentleman, and he had some advice for me that not for me personally, but that I was able to grasp onto, and I'm gonna play that clip right now. So we'll take a peek at that, and I'll see y'all when it's done.
Oh, it's pretty cool.
How many billions?
Oh, geez, we don't think that way.
Do you Google that and say that's not right? What they say? And how often do you keep track of that? How often do you keep track of that?
Of what?
Of like, hey, how much am I worth on this particular day? Do you keep?
Zero, never, like ever.
So when do you ever?
That's how other people keep score.
Okay, respect that. But at some point, you had to look at the number to see if you could afford an NHL team, right? With the franchise, and like when you.
When we.
Go ahead.
No, like when I'll never forget. We sold our company. I mean, we've been super fortunate. We've been super blessed. I remember selling our company in 2018, and like. It's been a ride that we had worked for a really long time that involved so many amazing people. And I specifically remember sitting down with my wife, Ashley, who you met. And like,
Awesome.
And I was like, hey, babe, like, check this out. Like, this is what just happened to our accounts. Like, it's kind of weird. And she literally just looked at me and was like, scary. I was like, wait, that's the answer? Scary? And like, reality is like, there's only a certain amount you need, and the rest is like, what are you going to go do with it? And like, how are you going to do this? And really, if you think about it, like sports franchises, and there's not a bigger platform to go and affect community change. What we've done with our scholarships, we have 60,000 kids playing junior jazz. Like, tech's great, and it's an incredible platform. Sports is the greatest unifying platform of all time. I mean, look at Buffalo.
Yes.
Look at them like shoveling. Look at the energy. Look at the reaction of Jazz fans when the Delta Center comes back. Like, you start looking at what sports can do, it's invigorating. And so the idea to continue that with hockey, and try to replicate what the Jazz have done for the community, you got to go for it. You got to go for it. Even if it's taking your life worth and your life savings and putting it all towards that, what else are you going to do with it? Buy more visors?
Well, I was about to say, Jerry Jones told a story to Joe Buck, I believe, on this one interview show that was really good. I don't think they do it anymore. Jerry said, there are people who are about 230 yards away from the green. There's a little bit of water in between them, and they decide to lay up and then hope for a birdie, maybe they get there. I'm going for the green every fucking time. And he talked about his investment in the Dallas Cowboys. He went all in on the Dallas Cowboys, I guess. Everybody kind of misconstrued how much money he potentially had. He was spending every dollar he had on the Dallas Cowboys. Now they're the most profitable, most expensive franchise on earth. And that mindset of like going for it is certainly a reason for his success. It sounds like you have a very similar thing. Sounds like you have that same mentality.
Yeah, I'm still heavily involved in tech, so I kind of have a day job a little bit on that side. And we're probably, Jerry and I probably have very different strategies on how we operate. I don't do that many interviews, but
you're killing this one, though. You're crushing this one.
Hey, there's no question. There's no question that like what he's done has been his style and his way, and it's worked, and he's gotten a bunch of people around him to go and do that. And so in a scenario, if you're going to go into sports, there's probably no other way. You can't tiptoe into it and say, hey, we're gonna be laying up here. You really need to go all the way in. And like it's something you learn throughout. And I don't think it's any different than what you guys are doing. It's like, hey, if we're doing all of this online and we're working, like we are in it. We're gonna buy the Thunderdome. We're gonna make it good. We're gonna set up golf holes just for Ryan when he comes to try to hit a hole in one and not be successful. But like
windy day,
and we're gonna.
That was tough.
Yeah,
that was a
windy day. Yeah. Windy day. But like, no, there's no other way. Like, what was I saying? There's nothing good you've got in your lives where you haven't like pushed beyond your comfort zone and where you thought it was. So naturally, you've got to be around people where you can look around and be like, all right, we're going. Come hell or high water, we're going, and we're going together.
Yeah.
And that's in the DNA in Utah.
Brilliant interview. I am hoping that y'all don't smack me around like those pickleballs at Ryan's Secret Society with copyrights on that. To touch on the Utah thing, can't speak for everyone, but I do have a brilliant one who's a guest on this show coming up probably 2 weeks, I'd say. 1, 2, 3, somewhere in there. Brilliant woman, nurse out there in Utah. But anyways, to the point of it, saw that interview and I said, that's right. That's right. You know, I've done way crazier things in active drug abuse. And I just put all the chips right in. And started buying everything that I thought I needed. I got on the internet, what do you need? What's the best one of this? What's the best one of that? Need this, need that. Whatever. Figure it out. And here we are. We ultimately figured it out in the sense of at least built the idea out. Now, hopefully, the magic will come and the views start coming in. I'm not going to be able to do stuff like that every episode. Otherwise, we won't generate any money. And if we don't generate any money, then we definitely can't eventually fund things like TAS-based service or a TAS-based business model. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, that acronym, Transportation as a Service. We could do the peer support stuff, but it'd be a long journey of trying to fund brick and mortar, what I call practical rehabilitation centers and proper. Sorry, I flip-flopped that backward. But it'd be a long journey in funding what I call practical sober living houses and proper rehabilitation centers. So anyways, that's the idea, is try to build this platform here, try to inform people, build our viewership on trust, on authenticity, because like the message will start right like from the youth. The message to our youth from me is like, let us be the ones that did this the hard way. We didn't have to walk around with test kits. We didn't have to do none of that nonsense. And we still put our lives in major jeopardy. I do not believe that if I had to be myself of, we'll go with 05 to, actually we'll go 04 to 14. We'll do a decade. 04 to 14. If I had to live that decade nowadays, I wouldn't make it. No way. Not with just, I mean, maybe, but probably not. I say that because I am from the mindset of nothing is impossible, and we can accomplish anything. But statistically speaking, very, 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 very small chance of making it through that with the fentanyl issues and everything. It's a major problem. So then you get to the point of so how do you want to do it? You got to obviously name the stuff. You got to come up with, all that stuff, and roll around some ideas. And when I'm looking at it all and I'm taking it all in, it's like, this whole message, this whole like pitch from the industry about addiction, like the whole thing's a scam. Like half the side wants you to believe that it's a disease, and the other half of the side wants you to like believe it's like moral failures. And the fact of the matter is it's like neither of those things. I don't believe it's a disease. I do have guests that put me on the fence at times, and then I ultimately end up back on the ground. It's not a disease. So I felt, what better thing to do than bring some pushback to the conversation. And so that's what we're doing here. The last thing I'll touch on about the Stigma Lounge, is I grew up a very rural area, small town. Everybody knows everybody. Things will kind of come full circle for you once you tune into the next episode and learn all about me. But I got to see a lot of these stigmas firsthand, be it through drug abuse or via other things throughout my life, but I got to see them firsthand. Just a couple quick notes I'm going to read, and then we'll get out of here. But addiction is often surrounded by negative stereotypes and stigmas, many of which are based on misconceptions. Now, this is stuff that I literally just asked the internet what it thinks. Addiction is a medical condition, not a moral failing. Despite common perceptions, addiction is a complex brain disorder involving changes in the brain's reward system, not simply a lack of willpower. The stigma often comes from viewing it as a personal failing rather than a medical issue. I don't believe that. I don't believe it's either of those, but we'll get into that. And then there's the criminal stigma. Many people view addiction as a criminal issue rather than a health issue. Again, I'm not on either side of that, but this is something I found interesting. In fact, most people with addiction are not involved in criminal activity, and only a small percentage commit crimes due to their substance abuse. Now, most would hear that and chuckle to themselves and think that they're like smarter than everyone else and be like, well, how can you get your substances if you're not committing a crime? And it's like, well, slow your roll, dog, because a lot of it is alcoholics, okay? Like alcohol, guess what? It's a substance. Guess what? It's legal. And guess what? If you don't get caught drinking and driving, or if you don't drink and drive at all, then you're not committing any crimes. But you're heavily, heavily, heavily dependent on that substance. So, little peek behind the curtain there on how I really feel about things. And these people that think they got it all figured out and they don't have a clue. Goes on to talk about that recovery is often impossible. It goes on to talk about that it's invisible. People in recovery face a stigma that even after they've sought help and made significant progress, there's a pervasive belief that addiction is a lifelong condition, which can prevent individuals from being fully accepted back in society. That is 110% a fact. Is something I deal with on a daily basis. Is something that I often wonder if families ever truly trust their ones they say they love. We'll get into that in the episodes to come. The stigma persists even after overdose deaths. Despite the growing awareness of the opioid crisis, overdose deaths continue to be stigmatized. Many people still blame the individuals who die instead of addressing broader systemic issues like overprescription and inadequate healthcare access. That one I can get on board with a little bit. Now, I absolutely inadequate healthcare access. Maybe not so much that it's not there, but that either one, the user doesn't know it's there, they don't know how to go about getting it or accessing it. And then I touched on in the first episode, the fact that that common sense, logic, rationale piece is not even there during that all. So that's where you need the peer support specialists and the different ones to come and that you can trust and help you get there. And then the isolation the stigmas can reinforce. The shame associated with addiction can lead to social isolation, making recovery harder. People with addiction may lose family support or feel disconnected from society, which can perpetuate their substance use. That is so sad. So sad and so true, because it makes sense in the at the most ground level sense in the trust aspect and everything. But again, hoping that we are able to gather a broad viewership of family members of those who are suffering and who have suffered, because we want to help y'all understand it also, and we want to help y'all, meaning if they're still in active use, go about it the right ways so they don't feel all these things that like just make it so impossible. I am so blessed to have been able to just block out the noise. And again, I speak to it on a few different occasions, and I'll tell you all about myself in the next episode. But I had some big motivating factors, so that helped. But without those, I don't know that I would have been able to push through all the stigmas, all the nonsense, all the just delusions. Like, because that's what it comes down to. It's a lot of just delusions that people have about you as a person, based on a small little segment of your life, if you're able to get a grasp on it. It talks about the genetics of it. And then if you get into it as it being understood as a complex medical condition, some argue that there are elements where personal choice or decision making still play a role. And basically it's saying like, okay, we'll buy into the fact of the sort of like a disease, but what about this? And they'll say, the decision to try a substance for the first time is a choice, whether it's alcohol, tobacco, drugs. Many people who eventually struggle with addiction initially make a conscious decision to try it. So, they're like, they'll hear it, but then they're pushing back with stuff like that. Some people argue that addiction involves ongoing choices, such as whether to continue using a substance despite negative consequences. While this view is often debated, it emphasizes the idea that individuals have moments of decision making where they could choose to stop or seek help, but they choose not to. Not really how it works, but number 3, and this one is where I think it all is. Coping mechanism. For some, addiction may begin as a way to cope with stress, trauma, or emotional pain. While this is not to downplay the underlying reasons for addiction, it can be argued that initially choosing substance as a coping mechanism is still a choice. This could lead to a cycle where, even as addiction develops, the person may feel like they are choosing to continue using to manage their emotions. That's not how it works, but it absolutely is. The coping is absolutely there, and you can't really apply the rest of it once we've acknowledged that it's being used as a coping mechanism. You can't really apply the rest of that to it because it doesn't even make sense. Like, if they're coping with something, then the rationale and the logic has been compromised. So, like, it's backwards the way that's viewed and thought. And then the relapse. In some cases, individuals in recovery may relapse, which some view that they made a choice. They got clean for whatever reason, then they made a choice to relapse. While relapse is a complex phenomenon, often tied to triggers, stress, and biological factors, the moment of relapse might involve a conscious decision to return to substance use, though this is heavily influenced by addiction's psychological and physiological hold. No, the relapse stuff is because nothing was fixed. You might have been able to string together some clean time. You might have been able to get into a facility or something, or have somebody there that can keep you focused on something other than the substances for a little while, and then you relapse. But that's just because what you're using the substances for hasn't been addressed, hasn't been fixed, and hasn't been taken care of. So, in my opinion, it's not really a relapse because it was never taken care of. It was never addressed. It's not like we got to a point of like success and then fell back into failure. Like, it's just not the case. The success is when you figure out why they're doing it, why we're doing it, why we're using it. And when we figure that out and we address that, then there's success. And then at that point, the only way for a relapse to happen is for something else maybe to come back up. Maybe the same type of trauma rears its ugly head. And then the susceptibility to relapse is there. But with a strong support system, people in the know, people that care, I believe that we can keep that under wraps and under control. I don't know. Let's all find out together. I appreciate y'all stopping by. It's a big fight. It's a hard fight. I think we can win this fight. I've never been one to believe in any or accept any failure. Like, not an option. Not doing it. No way. No how. I don't care what y'all think. You can miss me with that negativity. I'm going that way. I promise you it's happening. Has always been my mindset. And I'm going to extra emphasize it on this one. Pat, guys, all y'all with the show, hope y'all don't smack me around too much with those copyrights. If you do, please at least let the video stay up. I love y'all. Y'all are great. Y'all inspire so many people out there just to maintain happiness. Your guys' view and take on mental health is so awesome. I love it. I love it. I love that you recognize it. I love that you embrace it. And thank you so much, especially for that interview with Ryan, because it's what got me to this point right here. And hopefully it's going to expand even more. Last thing that we're going to do is we've done in episodes already recorded, have giveaways going on. For this one, I'm not going to do anything to do with a hobby. For this one, we're going to stick strictly business. Since, that's kind of what the context of it all is. And we're going to give 3 people $100. All you have to do to qualify, you have to hit that like button. You have to hit that subscribe button. And you have to leave a comment on the channel or on the video. I don't care what the comment is. The comment could be, I want that $100. The comment could be your sobriety date. The comment could be your favorite thing to do since you got clean, since you got sober. I don't really care what your comment is. We hit 100 comments. Everybody that's qualified in those 3 things, we will randomize them and give 3 people $100. Thank you all for stopping by. I'll tell you this every time. Can't do it without you. Definitely need y'all in more than one sense. Need y'all to keep an open mind for those out there still struggling. Keep an open heart. Show some love and gratitude just to society in general. And keep an open mindset when it comes to those you see struggling, because you never know what they might be going through. Somebody hasn't told you this yet today, or maybe you don't feel it. I love you, and I promise somebody else does too.